beautiful day today, and I've got my hands on a Mercedes-Benz AMG G63. Let's begin. The 2016 Mercedes AMG G63. The Mercedes-Benz G-Wagon was first designed in 1972. It was first sold in 1979. At that time, it looked Spartan, bare, kind of like a Willys Jeep, kind of like a tractor. Now, 40 years later, it looks like a shiny tractor. Most car models are typically redesigned every 4 or 5 years, but the Mercedes-Benz G-Wagon has remained largely unchanged in the last 40 years. The G63 is an AMG vehicle. AMG is Mercedes-Benz's performance division. They take normal Mercedes-Benzes and modify them to make them faster, better at handling, more luxurious, more desirable generally. It's pretty cool. I like the look of it. The metallic paint looks very nice. It has these flared fenders, big wheels, low profile tires. Some of the design elements seem to be more for looks than utilitarian purposes. The side pipe exhaust, for example, looks kind of cool, but if you're going off-roading, you might crunch it against a rock. Putting big wheels and low profile tires on a rugged SUV, to me, seems like putting high heels on snow boots. The front brush guard also seems a little bit useless and there for looks, because a brush guard is typically there to protect the bumper, right? If you hit something, it should be linked to the frame. The brush guard here is attached to the bumper, so if I hit something, I'm going to damage the bumper. But overall, I do like the looks of the Mercedes-Benz AMG G63. It's aggressive, it's utilitarian, it's sporty. The G63 has a body-on-frame chassis like a truck, not a unibody chassis like a car. The upside to a body-on-frame chassis is they're seen as being very rugged, so they're good for using off-road, for carrying heavy loads, for towing, for military campaigns, whatever you want to do with it. The downside to a body-on-frame chassis, they're typically seen as being heavy, so they don't deliver great gas mileage, they're not great at handling, they don't deliver the smoothest ride, and they're not seen as being as safe in collisions as modern unibody chassis. The drivetrain, this thing has a rear-to-front four-wheel drivetrain like a truck, not a front-to-rear all-wheel drivetrain like a car. The front-to-rear all-wheel drivetrain, the benefits are they're cheap to make, cheap to buy, they deliver good gas mileage, but they're not seen as being the performance standard. The Mercedes-Benz G-Wagon, the rear-to-front four-wheel drivetrain, is seen as expensive, heavy, they don't deliver the best gas mileage, but they are seen as the performance standard and the truck standard. The suspension, the G-Wagon has a live axle like a truck, not an independent suspension like a luxury or a sports car. Independent suspensions are great because the wheels can move independently over bumps and in curves, so they typically deliver better ride quality and better handling. The upside to a live axle is they're seen as being rugged and heavy duty, so you can use a G63 to go off-road, to carry heavy loads. The downside to a live axle is both of the wheels are essentially connected to one another, so when one wheel moves down, the other wheel moves up. This equates to a bumpy ride and not great handling at high speeds. Really cool thing about the G-Wagon, they have 3-stage locking diffs. I can hit a button and make sure 50-50, half the power goes to the front, half the power goes to the rear. I can lock the rear diff so the rear wheels spin at exactly the same speed. I can lock the front diff so the front wheels spin at the same speed. And the benefit to this is if you get stuck, you can get unstuck by using this feature. This is a very expensive, very rare, and very desirable feature in a four-wheel drive vehicle. This is one of the things that makes the G-Wagon such a desirable off-roader. One thing I don't like about this thing is the badge. It's called the G63, and the way Mercedes-Benzes are named, you would expect the numbers to denote the size of the engine like they used to. So if I see a 63, I think that this thing has a 6.3 liter or close to that size engine, but it doesn't have a 6.3 liter. It has a 5.4 liter engine. So why don't they call this thing the G54? What's even more confusing is they did sell a vehicle called the G55, which also had the same size 5.4 liter engine. What's even more annoying is in 2019, the G63 had a 4.0 liter engine. When I buy a vehicle like this, I want German engineering, not German marketing. Mercedes, what are you doing? Why are you monkeying around with the numbers? This thing has a 5.4 liter 32 valve twin turbocharged V8, which generates 563 horsepower and 561 pound-feet of torque. Quick lesson, the way an engine works, it sucks clean air in. There are explosions or combustions, it generates power, and then it blows dirty air out. A turbocharger is like a big metal hairdryer that forces more air into the engine. The more air an engine gets, the more power it can generate. The upside to a vehicle with a turbocharged engine, it makes the vehicle fun and fast to drive because the car is able to generate more power. The downside to a turbocharged engine, turbochargers are seen as things that increase engine wear. They generate heat. They may increase complications with repairs down the road because the turbochargers themselves may fail after a certain number of years. So they just make things a little bit more complicated, and they may increase maintenance and repair costs down the road. There's also something called turbo lag. The turbos have to spool up before they deliver a blast of air. As a result, if you hit the gas, you may be waiting a little bit for some power, and then that power will come all at once. This is fun, but it can also be scary at high speeds. Trucks either have disc brakes or drum brakes. Drum brakes last a long time, but they don't perform as well as disc brakes. The G63 has disc brakes all around for better performance, better stopping power. Let's talk about maintenance and repairs. This thing has had its wiring harness replaced at a cost of about $25,000. The owner of this vehicle had to be without the car for about 8 months after water seeped into the carpets, ruining the wiring harness. The whole vehicle had to be taken apart. I've heard about window regulators or window motors going out, costing about $400 or $500 on these things. People online have complained about electrical gremlins as well. Currently, this thing has a couple of warning lights on. It keeps telling me that my door is open when it's not. It's also throwing up another light as well. Oil changes cost about 160 bucks on this thing. I was able to find parts for new brakes, new front brakes for about $600 online. But if you own one of these things, let us know in the comments below. How much are you paying for brakes, oil changes, maintenance, because we're all curious. One thing some of my more delicate viewers might not like is you have to use your arms to open the trunk rather than having it open and close by itself. Oh, I have to use my arms to open and close the trunk. It's not like a modern SUV. Who cares? This thing has 40.3 cubic feet of storage space behind the rear seats and 75.1 cubic feet of storage space with the rear seats folded down. Oh, but I have to use my arms. The rear seats, the cushions are quite comfortable, but the front seats are set to my driving position up front, and there isn't a ton of room. I like the fact that there are 2 cup holders down below, a charging port, and 2 air conditioning vents. The front seats are bolstered, so they're nice and comfortable. This thing has a Designo leather package, so the leather is quilted, and the seats themselves are very comfortable. There's tons of headroom. It doesn't seem as roomy as a modern SUV, certainly not as roomy as a modern luxury SUV. From the outside, this thing looks massive, but when you get in here, it's a little bit tighter than you might expect. This thing has automatic climate control, power seats, heated seats, cooled seats, all the luxury features you could want. One thing I really do like about this thing is the manual or analog gauges. I think analog gauges look better, they last longer. You basically never need to repair them because they never fail. Those screens, my suspicion is that after 7 or 8 years, they'll fail, they'll be very expensive to replace, they'll make you want to buy a new vehicle. It's overall a nice place to spend time. I like sitting upright, I like the high up seating position. Let's take this thing for a spin. May not expect a $150,000 Mercedes-Benz to deliver an uncomfortable ride, but it is bumpy in here. There's road noise, there's wind noise. In corners, it feels okay. It doesn't feel wallowy like you might expect, but it doesn't feel sporty either. Again, 40-year-old chassis, it's as good as you might expect. I'm sure Mercedes-Benz and AMG did the best that they could with what they had. This thing drives like a truck. I feel like I'm constantly having to overcorrect the steering, which is a little bit annoying. I would say this thing is an acquired taste. I don't know if I would want to take a long road trip in one of these. It does not have a luxury car-like ride. You'll feel road imperfections even on perfectly smooth roads, and over the course of a long road trip, that equates to making you feel super tired. The engine on this thing is amazing. It sounds like a tractor on steroids. It feels like driving a tank with a jetpack strapped to it. When you step on the gas, Jesus, this thing is quick. 0 to 60, 4.8 seconds. Top speed 130 miles an hour, which isn't sports car fast, but considering this thing is a 5,600 pound SUV, it's pretty astonishing. The good, classic styling, unbelievably quick and fun to drive, solid foundations for a 4x4 truck chassis. It's a super sturdy vehicle. The bad, bumpy ride, terrible gas mileage. It's noisy, it's not comfortable. The badge is misleading to me. It's so nice that I'd feel worried about parking it anywhere due to fear of theft. I'm also leery of the cost of parts. I've owned Mercedes-Benzes in the past, and sometimes little things like this rear view mirror, which feels exactly like the one in my old S-Class, cracked, and it was like $1,000 to replace, which doesn't make sense to me. So I don't like the fear of the looming, potential for being charged a tax. What improvements would I make? Fix the badge, install a manual transmission, move that side pipe to the rear because I would like to be able to go off-roading in this thing. Overall, this thing is a really cool vehicle. It combines luxury, off-road capability, and sportiness in a package that does none of those things particularly well, but I think that's kind of the point. This vehicle is for someone who wants everything in one package. You want the most solid four-wheel drive capabilities, you want the biggest, most powerful engine, and you want luxury, quilted, soft leather seats, and you get all of those things. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button if you love cars, and I will see you next time.